C. Windolph's startling recollection of Custer's final battle. Discover Charles Windolph's gripping recollection of Custer's last stand. Charles Windolph, a U.S. Army soldier, took part in the historic Battle of the Little Bighorn. As a private in Company L of the 7th Cavalry Regiment, he was among the rare few to survive the clash. A German-born immigrant, Windolph enlisted in the Army in 1872 and served a full 5-year term. For his courageous actions during the battle, he received the prestigious Medal of Honor. His narrative remains one of the most thorough and credible on record, establishing him as a notable figure in the chronicles of American military history. Before we proceed, please make sure to like and subscribe to our channel to help support our growing community. On the decisive Sunday of June 25th, just before noon, we passed over the divide separating the Rosebud River from the Little Bighorn Valley. Riding westward in marching formation, our regiment moved forward. Each company rode 4 men across, with intervals of 50 to 60 feet separating them. Suddenly, we were ordered to stop. Lieutenant Cook then directed Benteen to lead his Company H, along with Company D under Captain Weir and Company K under Lieutenant Godfrey, into the hills to investigate and engage any hostiles they might find. General Custer retained troops 1F, C, and L under his command, while Major Reno took command of troops M, A, and G, accompanied by the majority of our Indian scouts, led by Lieutenants Varnum and Hare. Our entire 7th Cavalry, totaling about 600 men, was now divided into several separate elements, each tasked with pursuing enemy forces across challenging and rugged terrain. While we knew that enemy forces were positioned 12 to 15 miles to our west, the precise size of their numbers was unknown. Though our Indian scouts estimated that we faced several thousand warriors, Custer and most of the officers believed we were up against somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 fighters, possibly ill-equipped. The plan assumed the enemy would retreat, allowing us to engage a rear-guard action. Instead, we encountered a much larger force, possibly double what was anticipated, leaving our 600 men outnumbered roughly 5 to 1. Though Custer originally intended to strike at dawn on June 26th, he chose to launch an immediate assault after enemy scouts caught sight of his advancing column. Benteen, leading 3 companies, rode ahead to explore the terrain, which was difficult and hard on our horses. Atop every new ridge, Lieutenant Gibson relayed the same message: no signs of the enemy. Even among the troops, there was growing doubt about whether this mission would lead to any real engagement. After about 2 hours, we retraced our steps, backtracking along Custer's trail, grateful to be returning to familiar ground. Our route took us westward along a small stream, where the lead pack mules became stuck in a bog, underscoring the challenges of moving the pack train quickly. As we continued on, we began to hear faint gunfire ahead. Captain Weir led his company forward, with Benteen not far behind. All of us sensed that battle was near. Shortly after leaving the muddy terrain, we passed a burning teepee, likely torched by our Indian scouts. Our horses grew skittish, clearly sensing the tension in the air. Around this time, Sergeant Knipe of Tom Custer's Troop C galloped in with an order for Captain McDougal to speed up with the pack train. Benteen sent him back down the trail. Not long after, we saw Trumpeter Martini, wounded yet determined, arriving with a message from Custer instructing Benteen to hurry the packs forward. Martini, a spirited little Italian who had served as a drummer boy under Garibaldi during Italy's war for unification, was well known to me. He was part of H Troop. We used to tease him playfully, but after that day, no one ever mocked him again. He demonstrated true courage. His horse had been shot in the hip and was bleeding badly, though Martini seemed unaware of it. Benteen directed him to rejoin his company. I've always believed Benteen saw no reason to send further messages to McDougal. trusting that Sergeant Knipe had already delivered the essential instructions to rush the pack train forward. Either way, Martini's horse was worn out, and he had difficulty keeping pace. The sound of intense gunfire drew closer. Soon, we saw several Crow or Re-Scouts chasing Indian ponies. They shouted, "Soldiers!" and pointed to the high bluffs to the north. We knew we were close to the Little Bighorn Valley and that serious fighting was unfolding. Benteen commanded us to ready our pistols, and we charged up the bluffs at a gallop, bracing for immediate conflict. As we reached the top of the rolling hills, the valley opened up to our left. What we saw was a terrifying sight. In the valley, perhaps 150 feet below and about half a mile away, riders darted back and forth in chaos, with shots echoing in all directions. Further along the river, we spotted dense groups of mounted warriors, clearly hostiles. As we continued at speed, we barely had time to take in the horrific scene before we noticed U.S. soldiers, both mounted and dismounted, gathered on a knoll to the north. Our unit rode quickly toward them, hearts pounding. Here I must briefly recount what befell Reno's detachment. Around 12:15 p.m., Reno had been placed in command of 3 troops, joined by 17 Crow and Re-Scouts and 3 white civilian scouts. While Custer led 5 companies along the right side of the terrain, Reno advanced on the left. Benteen, with his 3 companies, had been dispatched to explore the difficult country to the south and west. As I was with Benteen, I did not personally witness what occurred over the next several hours. However, I've heard the accounts often enough from survivors to retell them in as plain a manner as possible. Please note, I was not there and am simply passing on what others shared. As both columns descended into a dry stream bed, they sometimes drew within 50 yards of each other, sometimes spread out by 200 yards. Together they advanced westward toward the Little Bighorn. Around 2 p.m., they discovered a burning teepee containing the body of an Indian warrior, one of the fallen from General Crook's skirmish just a week earlier, fewer than 20 miles away. One of the white scouts at the front signaled to Custer that hostiles were nearby, staying out of rifle range. Custer then ordered Major Reno to cross the creek and had Adjutant Cook deliver instructions to attack the village 2 miles westward, with the promise that support would follow. That final clause has long been the subject of debate regarding the tragedy that soon unfolded. Reno's 120 troopers, along with a few scouts and guides, crossed the river at a fast pace. They paused only briefly to water their mounts and organize into line on the far bank. The terrain on the west side of the river featured a relatively flat valley half a mile to a mile wide, leading up to a plateau. Across the river, the Wolf Mountains rose sharply, with gullies descending from the heights into the river plain. The Little Bighorn, 100 to 150 feet across, ran cold and clear over gravel. Indian villages stretched for nearly 3 miles along the river's west side, with the 5 Sioux tribes, as well as Cheyennes, Arapahoes, and Blackfeet, each camped in separate rings roughly a quarter-mile apart. Beyond them, vast pony herds roamed under the watch of women and young boys. It's believed that about 10,000 Native Americans were present, with 2,000 to 3,000 of them being warriors. This seems a good moment to dispel a popular myth. Not all the native warriors were equipped with modern repeating Winchesters and abundant ammunition. By my observation, about half wielded traditional weapons, bows, arrows, and lances. Of the remainder, many had outdated firearms, from old muzzle loaders to mismatched single shots. Only about a quarter of the total warriors carried modern repeaters. Additionally, native boys as young as 14 joined the fight, particularly during the latter part of the battle. Our own troops carried single-shot Springfield carbines, .45, 70 caliber, accurate and deadly, up to 600 yards. But during rapid firing, the breech often fouled and greasy shells jammed. Many soldiers were forced to pry them out with knives in the heat of battle, often costing them their lives. Each carried a Colt 6-shot Army revolver as well, with 100 rounds for their rifles and 24 for their sidearms, either on them or in saddlebags. When the troops dismounted and every fourth man took charge of holding horses, many mounts were lost to panic, costing us thousands of vital rounds, especially for Custer's detachment. Returning to Reno's group after crossing the river, they advanced in 4-man columns with the scouts on the left. They soon spotted mounted warriors racing back and forth, and the southernmost camps came into view. Reno arranged his troops and scouts in a skirmish line across the narrow valley. Troop M on the right, A in the middle, and G on the left, with scouts ahead to the left. Reno had his men dismount and spread out in a firing line, with 75 yards between each man. They advanced about half a mile toward the enemy camp before meeting a large mounted force charging toward them. For 10 minutes, Reno's men held firm and fired steadily, but they were soon engulfed by hundreds of hostile riders, some wielding repeaters. Seeing the danger of being surrounded, Reno ordered a retreat. His men remounted in orderly fashion and fell back 300 yards, but the enemy quickly renewed their assault. Reno's men again dismounted and resumed their firing line. For another 10 minutes they held, but the warriors closed in, firing at close quarters. Casualties mounted. Fearing total encirclement, Reno ordered a retreat to a cottonwood grove half a mile behind. In the chaos, many troopers were cut off from their units. Horses were lost, and disorder took hold. The worst losses occurred during this retreat. Troopers were shot from their saddles, killed on the spot, or mutilated. Survivors crossed the river in disarray and scrambled up a steep hill on the east bank, pursued by enemy riders. Between 15 and 20 men died near or in the river. Upon reaching the hill, the hostiles pulled back. Around 2:30 p.m., Captain Weir arrived with Troop D, followed closely by Benteen's troops, H and K. Reno's men were in chaos, but their arrival helped restore order. Benteen surveyed the scene and set up a defensive line. Captain McDougall soon arrived with Troop B and the pack train, delivering much-needed ammunition. The combined forces dug in, bracing for the worst. Meanwhile, Custer, with his 5 companies, had tried flanking the village to the north, but encountered the full force of the hostiles. Near the modern site of the National Cemetery, his men realized the overwhelming numbers they faced. Despite courageous resistance, Custer's troops were completely surrounded and defeated. As dusk fell, Reno and Benteen's men heard the gunfire from afar and feared the worst for their comrades. That night was tense, punctuated by sporadic attacks as warriors tested the perimeter. By morning, the native forces began to withdraw, having achieved a crushing victory. 2 days later, General Terry's column arrived, bringing relief to the survivors. The Battle of the Little Bighorn endures as one of the most dramatic and sobering episodes in U.S. history. The courage of men like Charles Windolph, who lived to tell the tale, offers us a haunting and intimate look at the unforgiving nature of frontier warfare. Stay with us for more eyewitness accounts from history's defining battles. Until next time, take care and goodbye.